That's all right.
totally fine.
Yeah. So we're here, Fireside. We are in Alberta, Central, Freedom Central at Red Dogs. He's invited us to come and sit by the fire and do one of the firesides. I'm Serena Freedom Bear. I live on Vancouver Island, but I'm from Sucker Creek First Nation here in Alberta. I'm Nihu, Cree, and
Adrien Thomas. You guys some of you guys know who I am, but I'm from Saskatchewan, Pelican Lake First Nations, and I live in here in Edmonton. So there you go.
There we go. There, we got connection now. So it's kind of a funny story because I'm here kind of on just following a dream and here on a whim that someone's like, oh, you're doing an Alberta tour. There was nothing planned. It literally was just a couple days before I came that I had a dream, and the next day I received an invitation, and it was meant to be. And one of the people I was meant to connect with is Adrien, because I think it was right before I left, a couple days before I left, that somebody said, do you know Adrien on TikTok? And then a couple hours later, we were in a live together, and it was time to connect. And so then we had the opportunity. I think I went to Clan Mother Nancy's birthday party. You had just left, so our paths kept doing this.
Yeah, I was over there to go wish her happy 84th birthday. I was also, invited there by, the Great Rebellion. His name is Owen, and from that point on, it was getting a little late. But yeah, that's where we kind of missed each other there. So
yeah.
Now I guess we're doing a live here. So
yeah. Our path, and you know what? We were outside talking, and there was just so much flowing. And one of the things we were talking about was treaties.
We're talking about natural law. We were also talking about sexuality as for what we lost, not the physical aspect, but the spiritual aspect.
Sacred sexuality.
Yeah, and we did call our tribes prior to. We were talking about the signing of the treaties, and also the understanding of what we're about to lose if we don't understand it. So if that makes sense. So.
I'm going to let you start the topic off with that, about the treaties and a little bit about when you say if we don't understand what we're about to lose, then it's lost. What does that mean for people who don't understand what that means?
You see, people don't understand that we had the great Indian Wars in America at one time. Before, the treaties came through. We had divine conquest, not for us, but the Caucasians and, the colonizers at the time, they had divine conquest. Every single thing that they actually learned from the Native Americans, especially in the Smithsonian, they since prior to 1492, they had to destroy. Everything prior to 1492, they let it go. So we had a lot of deep history that Native Americans knew at the time. We had civilizations, we had a lot of things, and that was it. But after, when we started dying off because of the diseases and everything like that, we had to try to fight for our land. And that's why we had the 78 or 87 year Indian Wars. We had the longest Native American wars in American history because it was domestic. That's why they called it the Wild West, the Great Wild West. And, it was on breached territory. But so that's why they came with the treaties. And when they came with the treaties, they had this understanding that if we came together and we all signed a treaty, all of us would put ourselves in peace. Now, this is the reason why I wanted to let people know the treaties are very important. How these documentations were actually signed, the written word, whether it was, because the one thing that people don't understand is that law itself and every single word is bastardized. So you have to make certain that English, whatever was signed, has to be understood.
And I just want to jump in on that real quick. Make sure you hold that train of thought. The way we understand the English language and the way we have been taught it, we don't actually use this language to its full capacity. We understand this language from a dummied down perspective. We don't actually understand the meaning of words. And so when we use it the way we've been conditioned to use it, we're following in a system that has enslaved us, because we don't understand the meanings of these words and what they actually mean and what we're actually agreeing to and what we're actually enslaving ourselves to. And that's us, because we were not taught the language in the way the language of what it actually means.
Like we're talking about Latin. English has so much terminologies. Every single word in English actually means something from the Latin aspect. So when we put it into context with the treaty, when they say Native American Indians, we have to hold on to the original treaty that we are Native American Indians. And what people don't understand is that, when we start victimizing ourselves and we start cancel culture because of the Edmonton Eskimos or anything, I get that aspect. But when we're talking about rights and we're talking about laws that we actually pass by, we cannot accept the word Indigenous or Aboriginal. Because when they start doing that, they start changing the definitions of who we are. Not only that, when you're talking about the United Nations and their with whatever their policies that they have, that also affects us. Because now we're, I don't know how many signings that they had right now, but a lot of Native Americans don't know what they're signing. And at the same time too, the only law,
and just real quick, because we don't know who we are. Our identity has been stripped and redefined because we don't, and in that we have been conditioned and we don't understand who we are and what we are. So like, for example, in school, how many of us learned that Christopher Columbus was looking for India for the spice trade, and that he thought he had found India and therefore we were called Indians. So no, you're not Indians. But yet the original term was North American Indian, in which all our contracts were originally negotiated, right? And so then what about Indigenous? I learned that Indigenous means of the land. And for me, it meant something a little different from a sacred perspective of that I am of the land. But yet it actually means something different when we look at contracts and the way contracts are used today. So it changes our identity, it changes what we've agreed to and how we're showing up and who we're showing up as, and the authority we give away. So yeah. I just wanted to explain that from a definition perspective.
Because we have to look at the law of man-made context, not natural law context or what was signed at the time. And if we look at the time and everything, that still is relevant today. But now we have to also understand that the Indian Act was also, a version that actually kept us down. That's what people don't understand about the Indian Act. The Indian Act brought residential schools. The Indian Act put us into reservations. The Indian Act formatted their chief and council systems too, their own, their bastardized versions of the Commonwealth, their laws.
It registered us and gave us a registration number.
Exactly. And these are the things that they try to do. And then, like what I've always said to a lot of survivors, it doesn't matter what down the line, we can blame the residential schools, but where did those policies come from? And this is what they have done to the Caucasian, especially in Europe. They used to have tribes back in the day. All of them used to have tribes back in the day before their countries. Mm-hmm. And what happened, now you ask anybody, where are you from? Scotland. Well, what is your heritage? I'm Scottish. But what is your tribe heritage? They lost that.
What were your clans people? What were their culture, their practice, their spirituality, their identity, their sacred knowing?
Yep. And that's what they're trying to do to us. When we get put into if we indoctrinate the United Nations, definition for who we are, Indigenous means Native Americans, Métis, and Inuit. And you put them together, and we're all inclusive. But what about our treaties? Inuit did not sign treaties. Mm-hmm. You see? They did not sign the Native American treaties as we. And I always say, we have to understand our identity. And if we don't understand our identity, that's how easy the Commonwealth, United Nations, and the Canadian government could take away your rights. We need to understand that.
So everybody's asking about UNDRIP. Everybody keeps asking us about UNDRIP. How does UNDRIP fit into what you're talking about right now, would you say?
That is basically the same format as what they were doing with, first you have to label us in a certain way. When they come back to the aspect of who is status Indian, how many of you picked Indigenous and signed? How many of you picked Aboriginal and signed? Because Aboriginals are also in Australia. What happened to the Australians? They lost all their land, their rights. And now they're citizens of Australia. That's exactly what's happening here. And that's what, you can look at the idea of UNDRIP, but at the same time too, it's to take away the rights, it's to take away the land. All you got to do is look at the money and who is all signing. And that's why I'm looking at all these Native American chief and councils. You think, I'm not trying to be mean, but from what's coming out of my heart, they are the new Indian agents.
Absolutely. They are perfectly conditioned.
And prior to World War II, this is where I got a lot of slack from. A veteran came up to me and he was trying to put, like I said in one of my videos, he's trying to put a poppy on my shirt. My grandfather said, don't take the poppy. It's not against the veterans or World War II. He said, don't take it because the army and the soldiers never fought for your rights. 1948, the war stopped. 1951, we're allowed to leave our reservations without the pink slip. Okay? See, we never had rights prior to World War II.
My Muslim went right from residential school into World War II. He was a prisoner of war. He was injured during the war. He came back. He couldn't vote. He didn't have rights here. He was not considered someone to have rights. So you're right. You're absolutely right in that.
And then 1978, it passed Congress in the United States where they can start learning their traditions and customs. Canada, 1979.
Women had the vote before North American Indians did.
Yeah. So now you're looking at 1990, we actually got our school systems back from the Commonwealth and Canadian government. Then now we look at these things, and now we think we have rights that we actually won, but the Indian Act is still in place where it still enslaves us in reservations. And even if you own a house, you think you own a house in a reservation, you don't. It's underneath the tree land, it's underneath the band system. At the same time too, CMHC is getting funded by the Canadian tax dollars. So you really look at it, it's all intertwined with thinking, oh, what rights did we really lose? A lot of elders and a lot of people ask me, and I said, you don't know because you're institutionalized. You don't know because you're institutionalized. And that's the thing. If you think that you have rights and it feels good because everything, no. They got you on a system. It's like a zoo, and they're feeding you meat. Long enough, after a while, your children think that it's normal. It's not.
And this is where I want to take this, because we started off with this talking about that it's important to know our history. And you carry a lot of that knowledge because of your elders making sure that you guys had that knowledge. I didn't receive that, but I have, for me, I feel sacred law. And so I follow it. And when you and I talk, you give me the teachings of the knowing I have. And so what I want, the reason I'm bringing this up, and this might be controversial, and I don't mean this offensive, and again, from my heart, I'm speaking, that many of our people, we think that in this retrieving who we are in our identity, when we are already conditioned in a certain way, institutionalized, we think that it means learning our dances and practicing our ceremonies and our language. And this is an aspect of it, but it's so much deeper than that. It's not enough to just know this and pass it on. You have to be able to feel it and connect and understand the sacred law behind it and to navigate that. And in order to do that, we have to decondition our minds and our hearts. We have to institutionalize ourselves so that we can return to this original lens of who we are. We can't see from the same lens of how we were conditioned and then come back at our culture and our spirituality and our ways from this altered lens. Then we don't touch the sacredness and the truth of it.
Yep. I tell you this, and I told this to a lot of people that I got offended. Your res dogs have more rights than you. And I mean that because they're natural laws. Economic Forum tell you that you will own nothing and be happy. What happened to the reservation? We have the highest sexual abuse per two, thinking that this was right for them when they know that they can't change laws.
You bring up something really important. It's because people always want to say, who do we blame? Who do we blame? Who do we be mad at? We don't need to blame anyone. We just need to understand or to comprehend. I don't want to say understand. We need to comprehend what took place, why it took place, how it took place, and what it created. and how it affects today, because it is what affects tomorrow. It affects our walk and what we build. And so it's not about blaming chief and council. It's not about blame. It's about understanding, comprehending, so that we can adjust. And I love when you said that Canada's turning into a reservation, because what took place in our ancestry
is happening now.
Absolutely. It's happening now. It's happening now.
If you really
to all people.
Yeah. If you want to blame somebody, I'll be bold. It came from the British Commonwealth. Everything that was instilled came from the British Commonwealth. Even the Prime Minister has to pledge allegiance. And backdoor deals and everything that has to go, it comes from the king and queen at the time. And that's why the residential schools were instilled, because they had a specific job. At the same time, residential schools, our school system had a specific job. I was getting strapped in the 80s for speaking my Cree tongue. That's why I lost it. I had to pledge allegiance until 1990 to the Queen every single day at 8:45 before school started, to the Queen. So this is how they indoctrinated us a lot of times.
But this is what I want to say about that as well. Yeah. And this is what's important to remember today. Colonization does not know a skin color or a people. All people have been colonized at one point or another, and this is where you talked about do people know who they are, who their ancestry is? If they're Scottish, do they know their clan? Do they know their culture, their spiritual ways, their land and earth and sacred based ways? Because at some point we were all colonized people, and that's a colonization is a mindset. It's a perversion of the mind. It's not a skin color.
And this is why we were talking about. Me and her had a great discussion outside about spirituality and sexuality, and it's not about the idea of physical sexuality within a man and woman. It's a part of it, but it's about understanding who you are. Like I've always said, the soul is your mind. The Greek terminology of soul is your mind, and the spirit is the energy that receives into your mind, and that's what we were talking about. And because of that, we have to understand what a woman is and what a man is. And we have to respect each other. And we have to realize that if I was married to somebody, that woman does not own my sexuality. And if I was married to her, I don't own her sexuality.
We don't get to covet and possess and have dominion over. We are not in ownership of each other. We are in sacred relationship with each other. It's a dance. It's a dance of energy and honoring of energy. And when it comes together, it's a sacred flow. It's not dominion and possession.
Yep. Yeah. And that's exactly, and I want to say this, from the dawn when we had colonization within America, they seen the woman sit at the seat of power with the men, and they always sat together and they understood each other to actually make decisions together. And when they saw us, they did not want to look at the woman, because they realized that we gave power to the woman just as much as they gave power to us. What did they do with Christianity? They made certain that they wore burqas, they made certain that their hair was done, they made certain that they cut them out, and they weren't allowed to vote. They were not allowed to, read and write an education. When it came down to us, what did they do? They needed to take away that sacred bond between woman and man. And that's why it destroyed our children after a while when they went to residential schools. He who rules the children rule the future. And that's why we're trying to give this knowledge back to our Native Americans and even you guys.
I want to go back for a second when we were talking about the sexual abuse on our reserves and within our nations, when we talked about the murdered and missing Indigenous women and how our stats are the highest among all people. And there's a reason for that. Right? Like we talked about how we didn't have that in our culture. Our ancestors, they didn't know that. And the reason they didn't know that was because when we were in relationship together, it was sacred, the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, and it was this dance together. And so when you came together, it was following sacred and natural law. So you could feel each other's energy, and it was an exchange of energy. And so there wasn't abuse in that way, because that's a perversion of sacred law. It was healing, it was connection, it was power, it was medicine, and it was used and danced in that way. But when we went to residential schools and sexual abuse took place, it broke that sacredness and our sacred bond in that way of knowing how to dance and move in that sacred knowledge. and that sacred way of knowing and being.
It's true. When you break the sexuality, this is what I've always said. The reason why there's a lot of murder missing women out there, I've always said this, and you guys heard me time and time again. I said, the day a female, a little girl was sexually abused is the day you should have put a red dress on her. Because that broke something so deep down inside that is so sacred, and nobody understands that. The same with a man. And nobody understands that. That's where what I was talking about. People said that you're against everything. No, there's underlying issues that we are not looking at, and I encourage every single elder, even if you got abused, I'm not trying to bring that up. I'm saying we need our elders today.
Absolutely.
We need our men today. We need our women today to start speaking about these things, because that demon is staying inside of you and is controlling our future.
And these things that were imposed in this way, they broke our connection. That trauma, it breaks our connection. And we were talking about the brain earlier. We were talking about some of the healing and plant medicines and things like that. And we were talking about the synapses of the brain. And I was saying the way it's been shown to me is that it's pathways, it's roads, and that our energy and our spirit moves through those pathways. But things like toxins in our food, trauma, abuse, all of these things, it clogs these pathways. These are the sacred pathways, like a tree with its roots, right? And so when you talk about our elders and you talk about our men and our women and needing to move through this trauma and this abuse that was there, we need to understand that in that it's clearing these pathways so we can now again have that deeper connection to these sacred knowings that we are all connected to and always had been connected to. But now those pathways just need to be reopened. So while we bring back knowledge, we also need to do the healing so we can connect deeper from a spirit place, from a soul place of navigating the sacred, that sacred and natural law.
And I've also said that with a lot of not just Native Americans, but the white women, Caucasian women. You guys see the rates, 84% of most relationships within a 10-year span will end in adultery. And you think about that, it has everything to do with natural law that you guys have, and also maybe there's a lot of things, maybe bills, maybe a lot of things, but the true connection is most people don't even have a real connection. Most people don't even know their neighbors. You know, people lost that spirit of communication, and communication is a sacred thing, especially with men and women, to actually understand each other. And that's the reason why most people today, marriage is just a certificate. And I'm not trying to go against the normality of everything, but let's just be honest. This is the reason why we lost a lot of things and our children are going crazy. They lost their sexuality probably because of other things, but at the same time too, it has a lot to do with the teaching of men and women to teach that child. And now man-made law is destroying that. With inflation, man-made law is destroying that. With laws, man-made law is destroying that. With identity politics and a lot of things that people don't understand is now we're going against everything because we're so confused.
We don't know who we are. We're not in connection. Our minds are clogged and conditioned and programmed to think and see in a way. And it's a perversion of how we are naturally connected and what is sacred and natural knowing and being. And so, you know, one of the things I always said in the beginning is I talk about freedom a little different than others. I talk about setting ourselves free here in our conditioning and our programming, and here in our hearts from our trauma and what divides us. Because when you talk about connection, in order to have connection here or unity or peace or any of these things, it must be in here first. It has to, we need to be in connection with who we are, our true identity, our being, our medicine, our sacredness, our knowing, our ancestors, the creator, that flow of sacred law, that connection. And in order to do that, we need to move through the trauma, and we need to decondition these narratives that we've adopted and that we've allowed to govern us that are not true. They're a perversion of reality. And then when we have that connection in self, we build that connection with each other, and we build that connection with community. That's what connection is. It starts in here.
And now that we know where we went wrong in all societies, whether you're from Europe or whatnot, we have to look at what's actually going on here. We have to look at where the opposition comes from. That's why I've always encouraged people to look at every single political party. When you look at all of them and you look at their history, that is who they are. And I've always said, the best way you could ever go forward is start with the grassroots movement and understanding that there are natural laws in Canada that still exist today, and that the only law that actually divides Canada from taking over is the treaties. That's the only thing. And the only person and people that can actually stop this great divide, especially with World Economic Forum or everybody down there, is that documentation first. And also you guys, if you understand the natural law of yourself, to understand what's going to happen to you guys. I don't want you guys to be a reservation in Canada, but that's what's going to happen.
We were the testing grounds. Our people, our ancestors were the testing grounds of what is taking place today to all people. And not just in Canada. This is happening globally in different ways, but it is truly happening.
So that's what I'm saying. You look at what's going on. You look at the prophecies that we're going to talk about and everything, the eighth fire, the seventh fire for the Cree, the Hopi prophecy,
the Rainbow
Aztecs, Warriors,
that White Buffalo Calf Woman.
Exactly, all these things. And then you just look at that because it has a lot to do with spirituality that most people have forgotten. So now what we have to do is try to unite and tell our stories before anything, because if we're still broken and we're still talking about identity politics, we're still talking about left versus right, if we're still talking about liberals versus the conservatives, Democrats versus the Republicans, that's how they get you. They get you with division. And that's what we need to do is forget about all politics today and concentrate on our own people and just say, you know what? We have to come together regardless.
Absolutely. Because we have something in our culture that we say, right? All my relations, right? And what does that mean? It means we are all related, not just to the trees and the rocks and the birds and the two-legged and the winged ones and the water ones, and we are all related. That's why the medicine wheel, it's all the four nations. It's the Asians and the Native Americans and the African descent and the Caucasians. It's all of us, because together we make the whole wheel. We are all relations, and we have been divided. And in order to have successful divide, you divide a people within, in their identity, within their spirit, their medicine, their connection, and then you divide them in society. And you see how divide is used as a tactic over and over and over. And that's why it's important that we do that internal work, and we do that work to not perpetuate the divide here, outside of ourselves. It's on all levels.
Yep. They divided the race before. They divided sexuality. They're dividing right now. They're dividing the children for the parents in the school systems. If you guys can't see division and you guys think it's just what it is, it's not. At the end of the day, they're going to come after you. And that's what they've always been doing, especially with my natives, to the point where they give you just enough rights where you think that you won, you didn't.
Yeah.
That's
it. They manipulate, and I say this: the best lies are the ones that have a fragment of truth, because they take something real and sacred and they wrap silky words around it to manipulate. Just enough that we go, oh, it catches us. Wait, there's something here, and then it manipulates us and moves us in whatever direction to have dominion over us. But they're lies. They're lies. They're not raising our voices. They're not empowering us. Is that true power? Unless we're in connection with our medicine and the sacred, and we have that sovereignty, how are we being empowered?
That's so true. And now to empower each other, you have to empower the man and the woman. And that's what people are not telling you right now. This identity politics, I'm not against any other, but I'm talking about the true aspect of sexuality. Her sexuality is a female, my sexuality is a male, and understanding that we both have equal but strong gifts. Maybe different, but strong gifts.
And together,
yeah,
together in honor and honoring each other's medicine, how sacred and powerful is that? right? That's connection. That's the way we're meant to exist. That's the law of the cosmos. That's natural and sacred.
Don't let anybody ever take that away. Don't ever and that's why a lot of you people are angry what society is teaching our children, society is teaching people right now. I encourage, doesn't matter if you're black, white, Asian, doesn't matter. You guys should all realize that your voices mean something. Communication, that's what they destroyed. They destroyed that communication between even our hearts, our spirits, or even now our tongue. We have to keep talking. And it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, if we lose our tongue, even our definitions, we lose everything.
That's something that when I started speaking out, and you've been speaking out a little longer than me, but our journeys just came together and we're speaking about the same things in different ways, but it's beautiful to have come across you on this path. And one of the things is that I've been facing a lot of persecution for speaking out and carrying, the way I was taught is that the way of the warrior, they carry the burden of truth. They carry the burden of truth, and it's not about a war path. It's not about taking life because life is sacred. It's about carrying truth and understanding the burden you're carrying and why and how and the importance of it. And so when I stepped forward on my path and was guided in this way, I received messages saying that I would be persecuted. And I went to those I loved and who knew me, and I said, my words are going to be perverted. My identity is going to be reshaped and manipulated. But remember who I have been to you. Always allow my words to represent me, because no one can represent my words but myself. And so remember who I've shown up as in your journey. Remember what my words and actions have been towards, and allow that to speak for itself. And I kind of hear you saying the same thing, like in some of what I've heard about your journey.
Yeah. When I started this journey, it was a long time ago, and about 5-6 years ago, and I never even wanted to be a part of this journey. And I started speaking truth with murdered and missing Indigenous women, and all of a sudden it just turned into a friction, and I had to defend myself, and then it turned into something else. And the only reason why I had to create a war within my own people, and this is what my elder said, is only because of the fact that there was slander against my name, saying that I was a child trafficker, and it went all over the world with that one post. And then this came from my own people. And that's when I realized there's only two things I can do. It's either I run away, put my tail between my legs, change my number, shut down my business, or fight. And I fought. And for most people that see me right now, they're pissed off of what they're going to say a lot of things. Why him? Well, you know what? My elder said I would be fighting my own people one day. And to the point where I'll have to look at the other side too. And, whether it was truth or whether it was to antagonize you guys, it worked. But I wanted you guys to be emotionally inclined to question the things that I talked about.
And that's it right there. When we bring truth forward, it's about questioning a reality, questioning our knowing, questioning our identity and the narratives we've subscribed to. It's allowing us to look and feel and think deeper so that we can be in touch with our own selves, our own knowing. And sometimes we cling to the realities we've known. Is it personal that they're attacking us because we're shaking up the truth, shaking up the narrative? No, they don't really know us, but it's because they feel under attack. Because what's under attack? It's their reality, it's their identity, it's their knowing. And that can be scary for people, especially when they finally felt like they found a place and they were finally being heard and they were finally rising. But let's rise instead in a true way, in a real way, in a way where it's a real foundation of all truths, not just the fragments of truths that have remained intact, but instead the natural and sacred laws, those truths governing us.
That's so true. And when I went down to you, it's like I went to hell and I met everybody's demons. And what I mean by everybody's demons, I met a lot of women that got sexually abused that were pissed off at me when I said things. A lot of, abusers themselves, sexual abuse, whether it's methamphetamine addicts, all the way down the line. To find out 2 years later, they phoned me and said, or messaged me and said, everything you said was true. It's not that I want to be true or on it or bring that out. It's that I wanted to show them, you know, the same reason why my mom went a certain way, or a lot of people in my family died. But sometimes telling the truth, no matter how hard it is, I'd rather be hated for telling the truth than loved for telling a lie.
That's right.
You know?
And here's the thing, I myself had to go on a long road of healing. Okay? I had a long road of healing like many of us. And one of the things I reclaimed in my healing is my truth. And because so many times in our trauma, we abandon ourselves. It's meant to divide us internally from our medicine, our knowing. And when I brought those things back together, I promised I would never abandon myself again. And so for me to subscribe to things that are untrue and to turn a blind eye and to not speak the truth when I see a lie in front of me is an abandonment of myself again. And I made that promise I would never abandon myself, my medicine and my sacredness. And so when I'm speaking, that's keeping the honor and the integrity of the healing that I done and my sacred connection. And so it's not about going out and having any kind of ill intent. It's not about trying to be right or prove anything. And like you, I had no personal aspirations. I don't want to do this. I didn't want this. But it was gifted to me as what I was being asked to bring forward and to carry in these dark places, for us to be the torch on these dark paths. And we had the strength, and our journey perfectly prepared us for it. And there's still so many lessons along the way. But I will ensure that as I walk this path, I will not abandon myself. I will not dishonor truth inside me. I will not do that. And so in that, I can always ensure that I'm gifting truth to the best of my ability.
That's all we have to do is look in a mirror. And it's hard sometimes to look in a mirror, no matter what it is. We have to look in a mirror, and we have to look at the truth of who we are and what our journeys have bring us to. And sometimes we have bad roads that we went through, but that's also experiences that we learn. That's education. And that's what we got to learn as well too, because there's a lot of people that went through the same path as I, you know. And that's the same thing with anybody, but that's what we use. White, black, red, yellow, it doesn't freaking matter. We are all the same when we really look at it. That's why I said yesterday, I went to see an elder, and everybody looked at me. He happened to be a white guy. That's what I'm saying. People all carry a spirit, a truth, and by that truth being told, it helps us along the line. And an eldership has a lot to do with experiences and wisdom. And that's what I'm saying. All you guys are wise if you guys just told the truth deep down in your hearts. And we're not Christians or trying to be a Christian channel, but at the same time too, it all talks about healing. And if you heal yourself, then I guarantee you guys will be that much stronger when the freedom convoy comes or the change comes, because they're gonna, the devil and all these angels and all these evil stuff will use every single thing against you if you're broken.
The dark will always attack the light, and it finds a way in by the darkness that you still carry within you. And the places that you carry that and it hides is within your shame and your guilt and your regret. And when you lean into those spaces and go into your healing, no one can ever use your story against you, and no one, and that darkness can't pull you down. You can carry that torch of light through that darkness. And in truth, like, there was something you just spoke a minute ago. What was it you were saying? It doesn't, the elder, it's about medicine.
Yep.
It's about medicine and our paths. Everything we've lived and walked, it has been in service to our journey. It has perfectly prepared us for everything we needed to walk through and learn. But if you stay stuck in the shame and the guilt and the trauma, you're not touching the medicine. You're not extracting the wisdom that is necessary for you to wield your power and your sacred path to the best of your abilities.
So true.
That's this again.
Yep.
Coming back in connection.
Yep. Here's what I wanted to say. Nobody could ever rob a strong man unless they bind his hands. What I mean by that is, if you're lying and if you're in a position of power, corruption, they will always bind you. If something that they know about you, they'll bind you. The only way you could ever be strong is to tell the truth. That's
right.
why nobody will ever use anything against you. And that's what we're trying to do to everybody, to understand white, black, yellow, red down the line. In order for us to really unite, we have to tell the truth, and that means talking to our neighbors, talking to people. And this is not about Christianity or anything. It's about being honest to the natural law of your heart and your spirit. Then you will know the truth of what's happening in Canada. And this is how those people are stealing everything away from you, is because we are not connected.
Yeah. Divide was used to disempower us and to stop us from hearing each other. And we see this. We see how many people, even in the comments, you come in and you cannot hear our words because you've allowed that divide in your hearts, and it clogs your ears and your eyes, and it becomes something that clogs the filter. But when we set ourselves free of the narratives and the conditioning and the trauma, and we do that work, and we come in right relation, then we can hear, we can question, we can grow, and we never stop learning. We never stop learning while we are here. We are always the teacher, and we are always the student, always.
So we're probably going to do a what do you call a tour? I don't know. I think that's where I'm set up to. I don't know. But here's the thing. A lot of people are commenting on my pages and everything, my videos, saying that Adrien, you're not going to Native American communities. It's not because I don't want to. It's because I have to go out there and educate other people. I don't go to Native Americans because they think they have the thing. Oh, we have to look at spreading truth to Canadians that don't understand natural law, and actually what's going on with Canada.
It's a reawakening and a remembering, because we all have that in our ancestry. We are all connected to natural and sacred law. We just have to remember and open those synapses and those channels so that we can reconnect in that way with ourselves, with nature, with the cosmos, with sacred and natural law, with each other, with our sacred feminine, the sacred masculine, all aspects of it.
If I'm not accepted in my Native American communities, that's totally fine. I'll always wish everybody great health and everything down the line. They may not like me, that's totally fine. Later on, if some things that you don't really understand, hopefully one day you guys will come, we come as one. But it has to start with friction. It has to start, if you guys don't, a lot of natives don't like our message, then come join us and have a discussion.
I actually want to, this is a perfect opportunity, something that I haven't had the opportunity to share from, and I don't want to say too much because I haven't spoken this anywhere yet publicly. But at the World Unity Convoy 2023 in Winnipeg, February 17th to 21st, one of the things we're going to have, a beautiful, beautiful thing that has emerged in numerous ways, is we're going to have peace tables. Because we want people to come and be able to sit down and to engage in these conversations, no matter what they are, no matter what divides us, to come and have these places that we can have these conversations and follow a format to guide us through it. And there will be ceremony there will be celebration there will be leader symposiums, there will be networking, there will be many of the different practical aspects of it. But at the core of it, we can't have these things such as unity, peace, and freedom unless we're willing to have these conversations together. As hard as they are.
As hard as they are, and it has to start somewhere. And that's why I didn't want to be in this journey, but I'm here. I don't think she did, but she's here. But at the same time, too, nobody's doing nothing. I mean, some people are trying, but they don't know where to go. But I think it all has a lot to do with discussion, talking about truths, talking about your identity, talking about deep-rooted politics, and talking about your spirituality. Once we all understand each other after a while, putting our feet to the ground, understanding that this is a great country, and that, like I said, res dogs have more damn rights than we do because they're natural, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to be funny about it, but that's the truth, you know what I mean? And we look at these things and we actually come together and we start really dissecting what's really, the divide of Canada. It's us against corporations.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
It's us against these corporations and these systems that enslave us, that have come and that have hijacked our minds and our language and our sovereignty, and that have kept us divided and sold us a certain reality, and put in all these different pieces of legislation and bills and acts and everything else, and understanding that we are not each other's enemies. We are not. We actually are the key, that when we come together and we stand together and we walk together, all of us, all our nations, all our brothers and sisters, that we are much more powerful together. And really, there is very little that divides us when we are in connection with natural and sacred law. We are in the flow of the sacred. And there is nothing that divides us.
There you go. Hi, that's all.
Hi. Hi.
Hopefully we have hopefully we said enough that you guys can understand, and I think you're going to be uploading it to Facebook too.
Yeah.
So if you guys follow Serena on Facebook,
Serena Freedom Bear. And what are you know what? You're not on here. Tell us what's your TikTok?
oh, Adrien what did I say? The
Realist. Adrien the Realist.
Yeah, Adrien the Realist. You can find me there, and there you go. I think some of you guys know, but some of you guys don't. Then you guys she'll
Yep.
tell you where. So.
Yep. And if you go look actually in my on my profile, I do edit a video of Adrien, so then you can just click it and go right and follow and like his page and get the notifications when he's live. This has been an honor. I felt very strongly that we needed to meet, and our paths brought us together, and this has been an honor to come and sit as the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, and to be able to share on our history together. And
there you go.
Yeah, and I want you to know, you always have a place at my table.
There you go.
Always.
Mine as well too.
Thank you.
There we go. Well, anywho, I thought I'd put it out there, and thank you guys for. And thank you for inviting me to your little live.
I also want to say, guys, thank you to Red Dog and we're in Alberta. We're at Freedom Central, this amazing, beautiful place. They have been hosting me while I've been here in Alberta. They've been caretaking me, and they have been generous hosts and guests. And so they said, hey guys, why don't you come sit Fireside? You were here first. You were part of the first Fireside.
Yeah.
You and Owen from the Great Rebellion. And you guys did a Fireside here. And then myself and who was I with? Vlad. We're here for the second Fireside with Red Dog. And then we did one last night. We were doing these on Facebook Live though, us. And then I was here with Martin Broadman and Red Dog last night, and Shane. And we did another Fireside, but they completely cut all my volume and my video and everything. So we were like, you know what, we're going to TikTok. And this was an honor to do this. And Red Dog said, come sit Fireside, have your conversations again. So thank you. Thank you to Freedom Central and your amazing, beautiful community out here of Freedom Family.
I wanted to also say something too. The political parties over there, I think you guys should be really weary for a bit. But at the same time, to any political party, we would love to go onto your table and talk to you guys and understand things, because you guys, there's a lot of education that you guys can learn from the residential schools, a lot of things, you get Indian Act and everything, because whether people believe it or not, the Indian Act is probably what's actually saving Canada at this very moment. Whether it's destroying us, but ironically, it's saving Canada. So that's what people don't get.
So we spoke a little earlier, for those of you coming late, we talked about what it done and how it was damaging. But now what Adrien's saying is that actually at this point, it's holding a fragment of something, the last of something together. And so don't be too quick to discard it. Let us lean into this and look at it a little deeper, because it's holding something still.
That's one. And I don't know how many political parties are out there, but you can message her or message me. But at the same time too, I think that this is the time for us to actually look at politics, and actually, if we're at the table, we'd love to do a live with you guys, and then that what brings unity and understanding with her followers, my followers, and whoever, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. These conversations need to take place, real conversations with real men and women.
Yeah. And also,
not corporations.
Yeah, and
not corporate representatives. Sorry.
Yeah. No, but most of these political parties today, I wouldn't trust them unless we are able to have a real discussion with them and hold them accountable. Because no matter what, they're still a part of the Commonwealth law, they're still a part of the Canadian law, they're still a part of, their own agenda. And all they are doing is just talking about talking at each other. They're not talking with each other. And that's the biggest divide. And that's the problem we have in Canada. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but that's what we need. We need unity. So.
Yeah. Somebody said, didn't I say that connection happens in silence? So we need to remember there's nothing black and white. There's not one way. Silence has many gifts that it holds. It's a sacred space unto itself, and in it there's much medicine. But also being able, we were gifted a voice. We were gifted words. And in this path and this journey, this is the medicine I was gifted. My sacred voice is powerful, and I was asked to carry it and wield it, and I will. And so we need to understand that it's a little bit of a limiting way to say, but this one rule is black and white. That's a colonial mindset. No, there are many realities all at once, just like our differences are actually what bring us together, because it's the individuality of our medicine. That's why we are all so different, because when we come together, we bring the whole picture. And it's these sacred laws, these sacred ways of the universe and the cosmos, these natural laws, they govern, and when you follow, they're not restricting. And so our minds, they don't need to be restricted, and neither do our hearts. But thank you for your question, and it was a great opportunity to share that teaching.
Thank you guys, especially thank you guys for following me and supporting me, and also thank you guys for hating me at one time too, because I think we just need friction to actually wake up a nation sometimes.
Absolutely.
And if we don't sometimes go against the grain, and how can we ever talk in important times?
That's right. So thank you everyone for joining, and I will download this, Adrien and I will upload it to Serena Freedom Bear at some point. But thank you everyone for joining this live and for letting us share, and maybe we'll come back together again and share in another capacity. Lots of